Hello and welcome to another episode of Gemstone Mine. I'm John.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Jake.
Today we're going to be highlighting a mechanic in Magic, taking a look at its place in gameplay, spotlighting some particular cards, and discuss ways that it can be used. The mechanic that we're going to explore today is treasures. But before we get to that, we got a little bit of news to talk about. First and foremost, by the time this episode is out, the pre-release for Dungeons & Dragons Adventures in the Forgotten Realms will have come and gone, and actually, by the time I am finished recording this episode, I am getting into my car and running up to Alex's house for our mini pre-release.
Which I am greatly looking forward to. I haven't played Magic in person in so long.
And I have my pre-release kits sitting here on my desk. I will not be playing with you guys, but I will be opening them and building some decks, and maybe once you're done, we can play on Spell Table.
I'll bring my laptop downstairs and you can stream and open with us. It'll be fine.
Any particular cards you guys are hoping to open out of this set?
Old Gnawbone.
Oh, that big dragon. Well, I think we might be talking about him when we're talking about treasures later on.
And Icing Death, because dragon equipment.
Nice. Jake, any particular cards in this set you are hoping to open?
There's not a whole lot in particular. One of the uncommons, You Find Some Prisoners, is something that I'm pretty sure I'll be able to at least pick up a couple copies of, because, again, uncommon. Mm-hmm. Most of the cards I'm interested in are actually in the Commander deck.
They do look pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And I think the one I'm most interested in is probably Sorcerer class and Paladin class. You can see our episode about the class cards from last week.
I'm definitely planning on doing some stuff with those, partially thanks to that episode.
But I think the real news we have to talk about is there has been a ban in the Commander format since last we were all together. The week of this being recorded, Hullbreacher is now banned in the format of Commander. And I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about it with you guys. We all have slightly different perspectives on the format. Some of us play more CEDH, some of us play more casual. And I wanted to get feedback from you guys on what you think about this ban. So Hullbreacher is our infamous card. It is a 3/2 for 2 and a blue, a Merfolk Pirate with Flash, and whenever an opponent would draw cards, if it is not the first card they drew this turn, you get a treasure instead of them drawing the card. It is... So, there was some reasoning behind why this card was banned. The quote from the Rules Committee is, Hullbreacher has been a problem card since its release. Its ostensible defensive use against extra card draw has been dwarfed by offensively combining it with mass draw effects to easily strip players' hands while accelerating the controller. That play pattern isn't something we want to see in casual play, see the Leovold ban. And we've seen a lot of evidence that is too tempting even there, as it combines with other wheels and other popular staples. The case against the card was overwhelming. There remain a few very similar cards that are still permitted, notably Notion Thief and Narset Parter of Veils. The additional hoops required, an additional color pip for Notion Thief and sorcery speed for Narset, appear to be keeping them to an appropriate level of play, though we'll continue to keep an eye on them. So I was personally pretty happy about this ban, speaking as somebody who went out and bought a foil extended art Hullbreacher several months ago, and it just seemed like the right thing to do for both casual and competitive. Alex, what do you think of the Hullbreacher ban?
Unfortunately, I own one, but I never actually got to play it. But after seeing all the comments on Twitter and watching games and streams and all that, I definitely think it probably should have eaten a ban much sooner than it did. Notion Thief is 4 mana and has additional color pip. Narset sorcery speed, but also kills itself if you want to take advantage of its other aspects. And Leovold ate a ban relatively quickly. I don't know why Hullbreacher stayed around as long as it did, but it was either that or ban wheels, so the thing that made it tempting wasn't there anymore, and I really didn't see that happening. So I'm happy it's gone.
Jake, what do you think?
I think Hullbreacher should not have been printed to begin with. It was in a Commander Legends set, so it was specifically made for Commander, but it's busted. I think it ate a ban for a similar reason that Paradox Engine did as well, in that it would effectively end games without actually ending the game for casual games a lot of the time, where people would just be knocked out. One player would have a huge advantage, but then take, multiple turns to actually close out the rest of the game. I own a couple copies of this. At the time it was banned, I only had it in one deck, but I was totally okay with pulling it out of that deck and slotting in some other cards.
Now, I've seen a lot of talks on Twitter and stuff like that, since it was banned, opening up the discussion of, no ban list play groups and things of that nature. I've seen some new Leovold lists showing up. So do you have any thoughts on now that the conversation of no ban list is being brought about? Any thoughts on something like that? Just as a side thought, hearing you talk about it.
I don't really see a whole lot of benefit to exploring no ban list. Personally, I kind of get the idea of being on the frontier and trying to explore what's possible and providing some information and feedback to try to help the community overall. But the fact of the matter is, I think the only way it works is if you quote unquote, unban one card at a time and see how they play in the format. Because no ban list is pretty simple. It's literally just time vault, voltaic key, and race to that.
Fair points.
I do think Hullbreacher at this point has been talked about quite a lot, and there's been some really good and some really weird takes on it. But if you want to hear some people talk that actually know what they're doing and are very rational, I suggest you check out Cameron and Cobblepot from the Laboratory Maniacs. They put out a video a couple days ago, July 14th, I believe, and they did a really good job discussing the ban itself, the reasonings behind it, and everything. So if you want a full episode on that, that would be a good place to check it.
Absolutely. I think what it comes down to for me is the best way that I heard Hullbreacher described was the idea of Hullbreacher essentially led to garbage time. I think it just kind of sums up everything that was bad about the card. And people asked me, well, you're a competitive player. Why are you happy to see it go? Because it was a card that was destructive in game warping and not in the good kind of game warping.
Despite being heavily invested in the competitive environment, that doesn't mean that a lot of us don't like variety and like to see interesting plays happen. If there is one best deck, like a Flash Hulk deck, for instance, even though it was the dominant deck for the time, a lot of people didn't play it because it was just the same deck, and you don't want to sit in a pod with 4 Flash Hulk decks, even if that would be technically the right choice. This is still a format that we play for fun.
So I think at the end of the day, we kind of have our consensus of we are relatively happy to see this ban come across. I will also say I was pretty pleased with the way the members of the CAG and Rules Committee have been a lot more transparent about how they approached this particular ban. We had a lot of feedback from members of the CAG saying, I did not vote for the ban, but I understand why it happened and I'm supportive of it. And other members saying, I did actively petition for a ban for this one to the Rules Committee. So I really like the increased communication and transparency from the Rules Committee and the CAG with this, and I feel like it's really addressing one of the issues that a lot of people have had with the Rules Committee in the past.
Yeah, if anyone from the CAG or the Rules Committee is listening, thank you. We do really like to hear the communication. There were some very odd reactions, and people got kind of heated about this. They're weird. Ignore them.
Absolutely. Now, we talked about some of the games that have been warped by Hullbreacher. Why don't we talk about games we have played? I had a few games since, well, unfortunately not since Hullbreacher was banned, but the last few games with Hullbreacher still in the format. I want to shout out the Mystic Remoras and Spleenface. We got to have a few games on the Mystic Remoras stream, and I got to showcase Malcolm and Kedis. Went 0-2, but the deck felt like it was in a pretty good place. One point, it was a turn 3 attempt off of Underworld Breach, and I did wind up getting stopped, but it was in a really good place at that point. I liked the way the deck was feeling.
Yeah, I was tuned into that stream and watching, and it was definitely good to see. You were basically playing archenemy for a couple turns with a few win attempts that everybody had to team up and stop. So even though you didn't win the games, you put forth a few win attempts that were so close.
It's one of the things I like about the deck. The top deck threat from Malcolm Kedis is just so high.
It turns out being able to effectively play a Black Lotus every turn is good.
So the last weekend before Hullbreacher got banned, I did get another game in with our regular crowd on the CDH Discord server. And I got to get a win in with Malcolm and Kedis. I went 1-1 that day. In with Underworld Breach, I managed to score a win. So it is a really nice backup win condition that has gotten a lot of value in the deck.
That is a different breach, but it is still very powerful.
Have either of you guys gotten any games in since last we talked?
I haven't gotten any EDH games or CDH games in. I do travel a lot for work, so I play Brawl as my pseudo fix. But I have noticed a lot of stuff I tend to like in Brawl, I try and copy over to Commander. I failed a few times trying to do this, but Volo Guide to Monsters is super fun on Brawl, and that is a deck I might talk about later. But
well,
yeah.
why don't we talk about that now then? Unless Jake, if you have any games that you have played recently?
Wow, I like how you're just brushing over me like I couldn't have played any games. I haven't played any games, but thank you very much. I did finish moving. I have finally finished unpacking. I have my new microphone set up. Hopefully people can tell a difference. And webcam is all good to go, so I'm ready to start jamming games pretty soon. Found a couple local game stores that are going to soon be doing in-person gaming.
Awesome.
So yeah, I hope to have a contribution to this segment in the next episode.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. Why don't we talk about then some of the decks that we're building? Alex, you mentioned already you're working on a Volo Guide to Monsters deck.
I'm working on a Volo Guides to Monsters deck. Essentially, Volo is a commander that says when he's in play, if you cast a creature spell that doesn't already have an existing type on the battlefield, create a token copy of it. It's not meant to be competitive, it's just a casual fun deck to just play fun value creatures and hopefully get 2 of them. The only limitation of the deck is making sure that I don't have an abundance of a specific creature type, so I don't non-bow myself.
True.
I also did have a bit of an epiphany watching John have his game with the Mystic Vermours and everything on Twitter about where I stand on CEDH and what I like or don't like about the deck building aspects and playing with it. I came to the conclusion that I'm not really a big fan of 3-color decks in competitive EDH. Once I realized that, and I realized I enjoyed Winota so much because it was 2-color, I realized that if I kept running with that, I'd be able to have more open to me. Rebel came up with an awesome deck list for Lannis Cryptozoologist, which spoke to me on many levels, so I'm trying to put that together. And because this is a treasure stream, I'm coming up with a Corvold Dragon on Treasure deck, because why not?
Jake, what are you working on currently?
So I mentioned one of the cards that I mentioned that the cards I'm interested in for this set, a lot of them are in the pre-constructed commander decks. One of them is the face card for the red-black deck, Prosper Tomebound. I'm definitely looking forward to doing something with this, either a competitive deck, which some have scoffed at me. I think it is possible. Maybe Doomsday Lines or something, who knows. And then also a more casual deck that will also be focused on treasures. And then I tuned into a Mental Misplay stream yesterday. What is today? 2 days ago. Which will be some indeterminate time in the past when people are listening. And Rachel Weeks was a guest, and she had a Dragon's Approach deck that looked really fun. And then I impulsively purchased 30 copies of Dragon's Approach while watching it go off. If you are unfamiliar, Dragon's Approach is a 2 generic and 1 red sorcery. It deals 3 damage to each opponent. You may exile Dragon's Approach and 4 cards named Dragon's Approach from your graveyard. If you do, search your library for a dragon creature card, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle. And most importantly, a deck can have any number of cards named Dragon's Approach. So I'm not entirely sure what I want to do with this. I know I want to play a bunch of Dragon's Approach. I'm thinking either Elsha of the Infinite or Obosh the Prey Piercer, both of which would have totally different takes. And I don't know, I'll mess around with it and see how it goes.
That sounds pretty cool. I'm not building anything super exciting at the moment. I started work on a Gruul deck with Naiath of the Dire Hunt. This is one of the Jumpstart commanders, which have fortunately dropped in price as Jumpstart has become more available. This is the legendary 3/3 human warrior with Fight built into it, where every time a creature you control fights or becomes blocked, you get to draw a card. So I'm trying to build it for our more casual in-person play group as a way to teach new players the importance and value of running answers. And teach them that if you can remove creatures or sweep the creature player's board with a wrath effect, they will be in a bad way and you will have gained a significant advantage. And it also looks fun to have a bunch of big beefy creatures punching. So
You're speaking Volo's language now. It's great.
And it's one of those cards that makes existing Magic cards with a very niche spot have a nice role.
Absolutely.
So fight cards. Yay.
Oh, you would not believe how deep I dug into my piles of bulk to find Prey-Upons and Titanic Brawls. Got a pit fight from Gate Crash sitting on my desk right now.
So it's fightclub.deck. Got it.
Actually, I'm calling it Body Improvement Club. Get the shout-outs to the Mob Psycho 100 fans out there.
I feel like you're speaking a different language.
You can reach the crew from Gemstone Mine on Twitter at GemstoneMineMTG, or send us an email at gemstoneminepodcast@gmail.com. On YouTube, we're Gemstone Mine Podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell.